Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive, and welcome back to the Monster Monologues, episode 2. So this episode is going to be a little bit different. My Kingdom Death game tonight got canceled because one of my buddies was sick, so we put it off until next week. And I have had a couple requests to demonstrate how I painted my Kingdom Death minis. So I was going to try to do kind of a paint and chat thing. I don't know how this is going to work. I've never done anything like this before, but thought I might as well try it out. Now, I am not an expert painter at all, not even close, okay? I am an amateur at best, I think. So I don't want people to think this is some kind of like pro, hey, how to paint your KDM models perfectly kind of video, or I don't want people to think that I'm giving advice when I shouldn't. But I have had a couple people ask me to demonstrate this, the way that I'm painting, because it's a very, very simple technique that is very quick, and I think it yields pretty good results. So I really like these two models. I think turned out pretty much exactly how I envisioned them. So whenever something creative turns out how you pictured it in your mind, I think that's a pretty good thing. I was going for kind of a stone statue look, like these guys were maybe chiseled or made out of rock. Maybe ultimately they look more like they're just in the dark, but whatever, it works. And so I'm going to kind of show people how I did that on this video and talk about something. I don't know if I have enough to talk about. Usually when I'm painting, I'm watching gaming podcasts or watching gaming YouTube videos or listening to podcasts. A lot of the stuff I do, I like to watch Lobos Jr. play Dark Souls while I paint. That's always kind of relaxing. Or lately I've been watching, and I can't remember the guy's name, I think it's Mike Callahan from the Myth board game Facebook group. His unboxing videos for the Myth stuff have gotten me really jazzed, because finally tomorrow I'm finally getting the Myth stretch goals and modules, which I found a guy who would sell them to me for a price that I thought was reasonable. And I am going to start a series on Myth, a warts and all series. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but I will go over. Let's start with the painting. So this is the primer that I like to use. This Krylon Max is super good primer, and it's really quite affordable. It goes on super smooth. It covers really well. It lasts a long time. However, I didn't have any of this when I did my first batch of these minis, and I brushed on a primer, and the primer that I had was a Vallejo, and it's actually a slightly different hue and maybe a couple shades lighter. So I have a feeling that the rest of this project, the models are going to look a little different, because this gray, and it was the best gray I could find. I do like the gray. I like the tone, and I think it's actually going to be a really good primer to use for color work. But it has a bluer tint to it, and it is quite a bit darker. So I'm not exactly sure how these are going to turn out. It could be a disaster. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not quite sure how the washes are going to look on this slightly darker, slightly bluer gray. But I've decided to tackle this with the 3 more of the narrative models. The old Survivor here. I love this. This model is fantastic. So let's try this guy first and see what happens. So the tones that I'm using, the shades, are the quick shade, the army paint. A soft tone goes on first. Then I do some more shadows with a dark tone. Then I do a dry brush with the ash gray, and then an anti-shine finish. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do for his little color highlight. I haven't quite figured that out yet because he does have a lantern. I'll probably just do a directional light for him because he does have a lantern. That should probably work. Oh yes, and I'm drinking Ardbeg 10. Quite delicious. My entire hobby room smells like smoke. So, all right, let's see here. Got my bowl of water, my palette there. And then I use not a tiny brush, not a big brush, but I like to use kind of a sloppy brush for the washes. This is a number 5 cheapo from Hobby Lobby. I guess kind of one of the things that's been on my mind lately is the whole Kickstarter thing. I really like Kickstarter. I think Kickstarter is really cool for board games. But there is this weird thing that I notice about, I call it kind of like the all-in culture. And it's kind of weird. It's almost like there's this competition in Kickstarter to see as a backer, for people to compete to see who can spend the most money the fastest in the most irresponsible way. That phenomenon kind of permeates the entire hobby, I think. And I'm not quite sure if I like it. I have no problem with people frivolously spending their money. God knows I do. I've got a shitload of expensive hobbies. Synthesizers. I'm getting into photography, so I'm buying lenses, cameras, board game. It's just, I have lots of stupid expensive hobbies. But there is this tendency with board games on Kickstarter to kind of just, Kickstarter is really just kind of like a super hype machine anyways. It's become just kind of a way to advertise. And so it's, but it's not just Kickstarter anymore. It's like the 3 weeks before the Kickstarter, you have like the different Facebook groups all talking about the game, and people posting the Futurama Fry meme of take my money or throwing your money at the screen, that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it's just weird. It's just weird. There seems to be big tendency in this hobby to kind of brag about how much money you spend, and how somehow if you go all in, your opinion on the game means more. Or if you have a $10,000 geek chick gaming table, that you're somehow a better, or you're like super into the hobby. People like to show just how, oh my god, I'm so into board games. Look at this table. It's just weird. I've been playing hobby board games since the 80s with Dungeons and Dragons, and the table that I'm filming these videos on costs $50 on Craigslist. And the table that we play all our games on in the living room was my wife and I bought for like $100 on Craigslist. So I guess you don't need an expensive table to play games. You don't need to go all in on every Kickstarter, because most of the times, most of us, we don't even see a tenth of what's in our games anyways. Because by the time we've received one big Kickstarter, we've already backed 10 more, and they're going to be coming out anytime. And so I rarely go all in. I almost always do just like the basic one that will give you the game and the stretch goals, because that's usually enough. You don't really have enough time. There's no way I'm going to have enough time to play everything in every one of these games I own. It's kind of ridiculous. But I don't know. So yeah, this is already looking quite a bit different, this wash on this primer. I'm not quite sure if I like it. I think this primer might be a little bit too blue. We'll have to see. Maybe it might actually cause the dry brushing to pop a little bit more. So the first wash, just be really sloppy with it, really. Sorry I keep going off frame. Like I said, I've never really done anything like this on camera before, so. But you can, yeah, just get really sloppy. Just load your brush up and slop it on. It'll kind of pull up where it needs to be pulled. It's a nice thing about this technique is you don't have to be a perfectionist. It actually is probably better if you're not a perfectionist. And the only downside to this technique is you end up waiting longer for it to dry than you do actually working on it. But yeah, so he looks okay. Let that dry there. This model I had a lot of trouble with. She was quite difficult, and I really could not figure out from the tutorials online where certain pieces of her cloth went, and I think I really screwed up this back piece. I don't think it's supposed to go like that. It doesn't look right. I don't know. I do like her hair, and I like her pose, but I don't know if I assembled her correctly. I'll have to check to see if maybe I can get a lighter, less blue-gray primer in this brand, this Krylon Max. But that would mean that I'll have like 3 different kind of shades of people on the table, but I guess that doesn't really matter. Perfection is the enemy of creativity. Sometimes I wish I was more of a perfectionist, but so I don't know if you guys know, but I also write and record albums, and because I'm not a perfectionist, I've actually written and recorded over 40 albums since the mid-90s. A lot of them are up on Bandcamp. Most of them, the ones on Bandcamp, are ambient synthesizer and kind of experimental albums. But I've done everything from hip-hop to rock to indie rock. So I've been on a little bit of a break from music for the last couple years. I just don't really have much to say right now, but I'm kind of feeling the itch to get back into it. My last album, I think it was called, what was it? It was Phases. And I think I released that in 2016 on Bandcamp. And I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. But after I recorded that album, I just couldn't seem to get anything done musically. But I go through that. I go through phases where that's kind of what the name of the album came from, where I'm super into one thing and then I get out of it and I get into something else. But music is one thing that I always go back to. And I've been writing and recording music for a really long time, playing in tons of bands and stuff. I haven't played in a band in a long time. I just kind of like writing and recording, doing my own thing now. It's weird painting without a podcast or a YouTube video playing. I kind of feel like I'm just rambling, but all right. Well, she looks okay. So speaking of Kickstarter, that new Awaken Realms game, Tainted Grail, I think it's called. That looks pretty awesome. I'm stoked about that. One thing I like is they're not weighing the whole thing down with a ton of plastic. So the base pledge ended up only being like $80 or so. That is very nice. I think you can get a mini add-on, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want any more minis to paint ever. So really looking forward. Big narrative exploration game, totally dungeon dive material. So that should be a lot of fun. But then once again, it doesn't come out for like, they say 2019, but I'll be surprised if we see it before 2020. I guess that's the nice thing about Kickstarter. You pay for something and then 4 years later, you get it. You get a notice that something shipped. Oh, I wonder what shipped. So the Succubus Publishing, they recently posted their first picture of the production model of Madara. And I think they're going to be doing an unboxing video of their copy tomorrow, I think they said. Really looking forward to Madara. I am a little leery though. I hope the game is good enough to sustain its quantity, because the quest book for that thing is 500 pages. That is huge. That's going to be another game that I probably will never see a tenth of, but I'm hoping that it's good enough that it's going to make me want to see all of it. One thing I do really like is that all of the text they will have in an app. They will have it be narrated, so you don't have to read it. Even I don't mind the reading, but having it in a narrated app could be pretty cool, depending on the voices that they get. They've had pretty good voiceovers on their recent YouTube videos, so. But I'm very, very excited for that game. Cautiously optimistic, I guess you could say. So I think this first coat of soft tone is done. And like I said, the crappy thing about this is just waiting for things to dry. See, he's still pretty wet here. So what I'm probably gonna have to do is probably take a break on this video and then wait for these guys to dry and then come back with a second part. This might end up being a 3-part series on painting these guys, because the next one will be a darker coat or a darker wash, and that will have to dry, and then we can finish up with the dry brush, which is the part of this process that things really start to pop. Anyways, I love dry brushing. I love the dry brushing technique. In painting, it's always been one of my favorite ways to get detail. I know that That's kind of an older style. The newer style, like the newer Games Workshop style, is all about really sharp, crisp lines. But I don't have the eyes or the hands for that anymore. So, well, I think that's going to be it. This is just kind of a short video showing the how to get your initial wash on there and the materials that I'm using. I hope this was interesting to some people. So you can see, and I know it's a little shiny, but that's just because the light is reflecting off of the wet. But you can see just how even just one color and a really basic wash can actually just add enough detail to where, you know, you could just throw this on and it still looks better than completely unpainted. So you don't need to be a master at painting to do this, and don't be afraid to just kind of get in there and start experimenting. I know these models maybe are a little bit expensive to start experimenting. I was kind of like, should I do this technique on maybe some cheaper things? But I don't know. You only live once, right? And it's not like I'm entering in competitions or anything. So, all right. Well, hope you guys liked this video, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.